will start this demo in 5 minutes, a couple of minutes from now. Very well, we'll start this demo. My name is Pablo Pasos. I'm the director of Cabo Labs Healthcare Informatics. So what we do at Cabo Labs is mainly consultancy projects and training projects on healthcare informatics, interoperability, and standards. So I'm mainly working those areas. And the idea of this Hangout is to demo one of the tools I have developed, that is the EHRServer. The EHRServer is an open source, service-oriented openEHR clinical data repository. The idea is that a project can use this as a backend or to store clinical information, or as an integration of clinical information from different sources, as a backend for mobile applications, and mainly to share clinical information between different systems. Yeah. So the main services provided by the EHRServer are the commit service, that is mainly to send information to the EHRServer. The querying service is to querying back that information in different ways. I will show you how a query is created and how to actually get data out the EHRServer. So we have a REST API that is documented on this guide. So if you download this PDF, you will get the documentation. There is a small, let's say, step-by-step guide of the main things you need to do to use the EHRServer, like management stuff, and some examples on how to create a query and how to actually get data out the EHRServer. And then we have the documentation of the REST API. So you have a lot of endpoints here that you can use to authenticate yourself, to get patients from the EHRServer, get EHRs, get clinical documents. In openEHR, we call clinical documents compositions. You have the commit service, that is the main service to get data in the server, in the EHRServer. You have the queries. You can actually query for queries, so you can see which queries are available in the EHR server, and you can execute them against an EHR of a patient. You have another service to actually call and execute a query, and you can set some parameters for the queries. You have a lot of flexibility on that. And that's it about the guide. So if you want to know how to use the EHR server, you can actually download this guide from our website. So I will go through, I will do a small walkthrough the main areas of the web interface. This is a management user interface that is web, and this is our staging server that you can actually use. You can test it yourself here. I will tell you how to do it when I finish with the walkthrough. It's very easy, and you can just create a user, create your patient's EHRs, and you can just start committing data and querying that data back. Yeah. So mainly you have here the dashboard is just some general information of the data you have in this instance of the EHR server. So I have some EHRs here, contributions in the openEHR jargon. Contributions are changes, are change sets to an EHR. So we modified EHR, we added clinical documents to EHR more than 400 times. You have the number of queries you have in the system, and templates. Templates are the openEHR templates. We use operational templates. Those that can be created by a tool called the template designer. So if you Google template designer HR, you will go to modeling tools in the openEHR website, and you can download the template designer here. So you can create your clinical document structures using this tool that is free to use. The idea of using templates is that you can say to the EHR server which clinical documents the EHR server supports. So the templates have all the internal structure of those clinical documents and the constraints that those documents should comply with. So if you need to support more clinical documents for different medical specialties, or you have different hospitals with different requirements about the structure of the clinical documents, you just create a structure in the template designer and you upload it here. You go to the templates section, you just go to upload template, and you should upload an OPT, an operational template, and that's it. Then the EHR server will create indexes from that template, and those indexes will help to index data from clinical documents when you do a commit, and that data that is indexed will be used for the queries. So that's how the EHR server works internally. I have here some just test operational templates, just some samples to let users actually test the EHR server, how it works. Nothing here is real, but it looks like it is real. So we have a template for a clinical encounter, a template for a referral, one template to record vital signs. Sorry, some terms here are in Spanish, but it's because the templates themselves are in Spanish. But you can get the idea. So the next section is the people. Here you can create patients, and you can assign an ID to your patients. We have an internal ID that is a unique ID that will be assigned to all the patients. After you create a patient, you can create an EHR to that patient. Yeah. So after you create an EHR, you will be able to see the EHR by clicking on Show EHR, the EHR information. So you can see the patient unique identifier, the EHR unique identifier, some information from the patient. Then you see here as I said, the contributions are the change sets to the EHR. So you can, here is a map of all the commits to the EHR server. When some external system sends information to the EHR server, you will see one point here on the chart. And also you will see all the information from all the commits below. So here you can see that you have a clinical document that was committed on this date. That is an encounter, so a clinical encounter, and you can see the actual clinical document in the original format, in the XML format. This is an XML that is compliant with the openEHR schemas. So you can get the openEHR schemas, and you can see this kind of structure. This is what client systems should use to actually send information to a EHR server. Just create an XML, knowing the structure. The structure is defined on the operational template, as I said. And here you can see, let's say you have some information that is text. It's just dummy data here. But here we can see blood pressure, systolic and diastolic. You can see values there, the units, etc. So all the information is here. And also you can see the XML with an style sheet applied. So this style sheet was provided by Sam Hard. I think I borrow it from a project from openEHR repository on GitHub. So it is just showing the same XML with a nice format. This can be the the clinical document format that you show to users. So these are all the contributions to the EHR of this patient, and you can see different types of documents. You have encounter, you have vital signs, you have referrals. So here you see the type of document. Good. Also, you can see all the contributions. This is a small management view, so you can see all the contributions to all the EHRs that you have access to. Here I'm logged in as an administrator of the system, so I have access to everything. But if you are logged in as a user associated with a specific organization, you will see here only the contributions to the EHRs associated with that organization. So you have the number of contributions sent on each month. So you have a small chart there, and you can see each contributions, the ID of the EHR associated with each contribution, and you can see actually the content of the contribution. Each contribution can have one or more clinical documents associated, so you can commit 3 clinical documents at one time. So here we have just one clinical document associated with this contribution. So you have the contribution unique identifier, you have the commit date and time, you have the identifier of the clinical document that you committed. As you can see, we call these versions. A small comment about that is that the EHRServer supports versioning of clinical documents. So if you and this is based on the openEHR specifications about versioning. When you have a document and you have data that is wrong on a clinical document, but you already committed that clinical document to the EHRServer, or is missing data on the clinical document, you can create a correction or an amendment of that document, and that, instead of replacing the previous document, will create another version. So instead of having this like the UID, an identifier of the system, and 1, you will have a 2 here. And you can access all the versions of each clinical document from the from this user interface. I will show you that in a minute. So versioning is supported by the EHRServer. And here you can see also the same. You have the contribution, you have the clinical documents in the contribution, and you can see the XML format of each clinical document and the the document format with the style sheet applied. Yeah. Versions. So this is related to what I said about versioning. Here we list all the clinical documents, but the clinical documents that can have many versions associated. So if we click on one of these, inside one of these, you will see all the versions of each of this clinical document. So if we don't have two versions of this document, but if you have a correction for this clinical document with this ID, you will see here another box like this with the same ID as the version composition, that is the clinical document, and a 2 here that is a version number. And you can see the XML formats, and maybe in the future we can do some functionalities. We can implement something to calculate the differences between different versions. So you can click on one document and another document, and you can click on compare, and you will see the differences between the XML. So that will be a nice feature to add here. Directory works. This follows the openEHR model that supports that EHRs. Inside the EHRs, you can define a structure of folders that you can use to store or associate your clinical documents, so it's easier to access, actually to search through clinical documents and to organize the EHR of a patient. Here you can create folders inside the EHRs, and after that you can associate clinical documents with those folders. So this is just to support that feature of the openEHR model. And the queries, I think the queries is the is the main feature of this this server, the EHRServer. I have made a lot of effort to make the query creation easy to use. There are some improvements to do on the user interface, but it's working very, very well. I made like 5 different versions and evolutions of this, so I hope you can enjoy this feature when you're testing. I have some queries already created, but I will show you how to create a query from scratch. I will create 2 queries. You should assign a name to a query, and you should select first a type of query. When the type is composition, what you want as a result of the query are clinical documents, full clinical documents. And when you select data value, what you want is individual data. So you want just data points as a result of the query. So I will create a query to get the clinical documents that have high blood pressure. So I will say high blood pressure docs, and we'll select composition because I want clinical documents. The next thing I need to do is select, because I want blood pressure, select the concept of blood pressure. openEHR uses archetypes to model these clinical concepts and define the internal structure of the clinical documents. And what I show here is the identifier of the archetype, really. But you can read there that we have blood pressure defined there. When you click on a clinical document, you will get on data points, you will get the internal nodes defined on that archetype. So for blood pressure, we have systolic, diastolic, and a comment. Sorry, it's in Spanish, but you can understand. So I will, and if you select temperature, you will see a temperature node there. If you select, I don't know, result for encounter, you will see type of contact, problem there. So it works for any concept, any archetype, really. So I will select the systolic. And when you select a data point, you can assign a criteria. So I will use this criteria to search. So this is the criteria builder. You can select that the magnitude of the blood pressure is greater than 140, and the units should be equal to mercury millimeters. So this mercury millimeters value, we get this value from the operational template. It's not hard-coded here, it's dynamic. So we get this from the definition of the document that is really the archetype, yeah, the definition of the archetype. So I will add this criteria, but also we'll select diastolic greater than 90. I will add this here. And if you go below, you will see both conditions. So blood pressure, systolic should be greater than 140. Blood pressure diastolic should be greater than 90. Yeah. And I want that this condition is evaluated using an OR condition. So an OR operator. So we'll select here from criteria, logic, the OR, and I can select the default format of the output. I can select XML or JSON. Yeah, so I will select just JSON. And you can remove a condition if you just it is wrong. You know, if you detect an error, and add another one. Yeah. So I can create this query or test it. So I can test it with live data. So I will select an EHR. Yeah, I select there my EHR that has some information, and I can click on execute. Look that we have the option of retrieve data. That is on no. I will show you the both options with retrieve data on no and yes. So if you select to not retrieve data, you will see as a result, I clicked on execute and I see the result in JSON. You will see indexes. These are pointers to clinical documents, are pointers to compositions, really, not the compositions themselves, because I select that this query doesn't retrieve the data. So if I get this as a result, with the unique ID of the composition, I can get the full composition, the content of the composition, the clinical information, using the REST API, just the endpoint to get a composition by its unique ID. And if I change like the format here to XML and click on execute, so I will get the results in XML. You can execute the queries using the REST API also. So the REST API will see the same results as we see here. Yeah, so you can query in different ways. It's very flexible the way you define the condition, and if you want the data or you want just the pointers to the documents, not the documents. And I will select yes there and click on execute. And this can take longer, but you can see there that is versions of documents. You can see there that this is the composition. And here, if I look for blood pressure, let me find the node. Here I have systolic and diastolic, and both values are greater than the values that I set on the criteria. So you can see that this makes sense with the query I just made. So this is I think it's a pretty good functionality, a pretty good feature to let users, and actually clinical users, should define these queries that will be available to different client systems to use to get this data out, the EHRServer. And you can get this data in different formats also. As I said, we can get pointers to the clinical documents, we can get the clinical documents, the full clinical documents, the content, and also we can get with different formats. So we'll just select JSON and execute the query again. This might take a couple of seconds. There it is. So we get the same clinical document that it was in XML in JSON. So it's easier to integrate with platforms that use JavaScript. Yeah, so it's pretty easy. I can save this query. When I save this query, a unique identifier will be assigned to the query, and that unique identifier will be used from the REST API to actually execute the query. Yeah, and you have some other parameters that are documented on the guide, on the EHRServer guide. For example, when you go to execute a query, you set the query UID. The UID I just show you, this one. And you can set a EHR identifier. So you want to query just one EHR, or you want to query many EHRs. That depends on you and your requirement. And you can set filters by date. So you can set a range of dates and get the clinical documents between 2 dates. Yeah, and both are optional. So you can get the documents, from here to 1 week before, something like that. And here you can see it's just the query in its JSON format and XML format. The idea of this is in the near future, we will allow to create queries and export and import queries. So with export and import, you can just, if you have 3 EHR servers, you can create a query in one, and you can just export that to the other 2 servers. So you don't need to create the same query twice or 3 times. Yeah, so that's the main idea. And if you go to edit here, you can just change all the query, the criteria, etc., or you can just go back to the test query. Yeah, so that is the creation and testing of composition queries. And now this will be fine. I will create a data query. I think I have another query for vital signs, but I will create this just. It's the same user interface, but now it's not defining conditions. It's just selecting which parts of the archetypes I want on the result. It's like the select columns in a SQL query. So I will find, for example, blood pressure. I want systolic. I want diastolic. Body temperature. I want the temperature on my results. I want the weight. Bristol scale, I don't know what that is, but I don't want it on my results. Height. Pulse, I want that also. So I just select some data fields there. So blood pressure, body temperature, weight, height, pulse. And we have some options here. We have the output format also, so I can get the data in XML or JSON, and I can, this is very important, I can group the information in different ways. So I can just select no grouping at all. I can group information by composition. That means that the data that was recorded on the same clinical document to be grouped on the results. Or I can group by path. By path means by type of data. Yeah, because on openEHR, when you select a data point from an archetype or an operational template, that has a unique path. So this is the unique path that identifies the systolic blood pressure. So what I'm doing when I'm grouping by path is I want all the values from diastolic blood pressure together, all the values from systolic blood pressure together, all the values for body temperature together. Yeah, and I will show you why. Grouping by path is gets time series that are easier to chart, and grouping by composition is easier to show the results as a table. Yeah, and no grouping, maybe you don't want to group any data and you want the data in the raw grouping, let's say the default, and you might want to process the data yourself, and do different groupings yourself. That depends on your requirement. What I want to do is to group by path. That is very nice. The result is very nice. If I select, let's say, my EHR again, and I click on execute, I will get the data. So you can see all the data points here, and all this data is grouped by a path. So all this is for systolic blood pressure. Yeah. So you get one time series with the values, the units, and the timestamp associated with that data. This timestamp is the date of creation of the clinical document that contains this data. So the same for diastolic, you will see all the data there. The same for blood, body temperature, you will see there, and you will see here, this is in Celsius, weight in kilograms, height, centimeters, etc. And the EHRServer detects that the results are numbers, and this will be automatically created. So this will create a chart with the data that you saw on the results. So it will chart this automatically, so you can check. This is easier to verify. At a glance, you can see if the values make sense or not for the query you are testing, instead of going through all the data. So it's a shortcut. It's really a nice feature. And you can see here that you have all the series for each of the data points that I selected on the query. You see systolic, diastolic, temperature, weight, height, and heart frequency. Yeah, so that's nice. So if the query is okay, I can save the query, and that will allow client systems to execute the query using what I said, the query execute endpoint. Yeah, so that's it. I think you can actually write comments here. If you have any questions, I will share the link. I think you have access to this. I think you can just write here. If you have any questions, just let me know. So this is query building and testing. The next thing I want to show you is the indexes. These are created when you upload a new operational template, and these, as I said before, are used when a new clinical document is received by the commit endpoint, and we need to get the data out, that XML, the big XML, and index the data to allow the queries to work as I showed you. So we just have different, the template ID, the path inside the template, etc. All is here, and we use this metadata, let's say, internally to querying. The templates I already show you that, how to upload templates, and that those templates will define the internal structure of the clinical documents that are supported by the EHRServer, and uploading the templates will allow you to build the queries, really, because this defined internal structure and of the clinical documents, and the queries are based on this internal structure. And then you have just some internal management stuff that is related to user management. You can create users here. Role management, you can create and assign roles. Organizations, when you sign up to a EHRServer, you will be assigned to one organization, and you can create one organization here, but you can also create more organizations and support multi-tenancy. So you can, if you have two clients, two small clinics, and you want to provide clinical data storage for those clinics, you can use one instance of the EHRServer and just separate the organizations, really. And you can just commit data and query data by organization. And the ID types are just the types of identifiers that can be assigned to persons. So when you create a person, you can assign an identifier, and you can select a type of identifier. And here you can just manage that list. Yeah, and that's it. It's mainly the whole workflow of working with the EHRServer. You can send data, you can query data, and you can create the queries, actually, and you have the REST API. One thing I want to show you before just finishing is how to query data from external systems. Yeah, so I just created a new patient, this patient 1, that has just one contribution, so it has almost nothing there. And we have this other system that is called the EHR committer, or just committer. So you can use this system, actually. So you can log in this system. You can use this system to create data and commit data to the EHRServer to test. And you can create queries over that data. To log in the system, you will use the same username and password and organization number as you have on the EHRServer, because this uses the EHRServer to authenticate. Yeah, so you can, I will just enter here a dummy organization number, logged in. So I can go to, what I see here is a list of operational templates that are already loaded on the EHRServer. And I will click on the vital signs one. What the EHR committer does is creates, this is a test form based on the structure of the operational template. Yeah. So I will select patient 1 from there. It's the patient that has just one contribution. And these fields, you can change the values, but for some of the fields, it's just dummy data. This is generated. I can change this if I want. I don't know. It's just auto-generated data. This is mainly for me for testing the EHRServer, but you can use it also. So you can see here heart rate 48. When you save this will create the XML with the openEHR format, and we'll commit that. We'll use the commit endpoint to the EHRServer. These are two different systems on different servers. Yeah, so they are actually talking using the REST API. So we'll just create that. And if I go here and reload this page, you should see two contributions. So you have 1 point here and 1 point there. Yeah. So this is the second one. And if you go here, this is the new one. Yeah. And if I go to the clinical document, I will see, hopefully, it was 48, I think, the frequency. No, 64, 48 here. The heart frequency. So it's just the data that I just created here, and I can go and create another one, and I will see the data there. It's not difficult to actually build those XMLs and use the REST API. Yeah, it's just selecting the patient and create another one. So any system, any mobile application can use the EHRServer as a backend. Any modern web system can use the EHRServer as a backend to integrate data and query data back. So it's really very easy. The idea also of the EHRServer is to allow people that doesn't know openEHR and they don't want to implement a standard. It's very difficult to remove that difficulty from them and just let them work with something that already implements the standard, the specifications. There is another commit there. So one small feature this has is this really looks great on mobile devices. So if you have a tablet or a mobile phone, you can actually use the EHRServer as you were on the web. Yeah, so it looks like a mobile application. So again, actually, I use this to actually execute queries. You know, this is more from this small screen from my phone, and the results looks good. Looks pretty nice. So if you go to the chart, you have a lot of data there, but you get the idea of what you can do with the EHRServer. So if you have any questions, I think you can leave a comment here. here. Yeah, I see comments. So I will be here if you want to ask anything. I will review the actual comments. Thomas Beal, thank you, Thomas. The link to this will be stored on YouTube. So later I will share the link on from Twitter. So if you want to follow me on Twitter, Pasos at Pasos. So just follow me and you will receive the link to YouTube, the YouTube video. Thanks, Thomas. Hildy and Ian, thank you. This one question from Hildy is good. What I use to create the indexes is really all the data points that has a data value associated. So if you see the composition, you will see the data values from the context of the composition. Those will be indexed because those have data values associated, so and have path associated. We don't index anything in the middle. Like you won't have an index of an item tree or a section. You will have indexes to those values in the composition context, or values on elements. Really, so are really the trees, the leaves of the tree defined by the archetype or the operational template. Those are the indexes we created. And if you see here, if you analyze, these paths, you will see that almost all ends with value. So it's just two elements. That's why we also have this type column here, because all the paths here are associated with a type. But also you will have indexes for the start date, end date, etc. for the composition. So here you can see category. So this is the category associated with the composition. So we'll go back here. Any other questions, comments? All is welcome. What I'm doing right now, just as context, is talking with friends on companies, to create a pilot, really a pilot project, a small pilot project to have this used in a real environment. So I want to test the EHRServer with real clinical data, with real users. I think that's the next step, because the functionality you see is almost there. There are just some UI improvements that we need to do. It's nothing related to the core of the system. The core is really solid and it's working pretty good. Myself, I'm surprised, but I did a lot of work on the EHRServer, and on my free time that I don't have much, but all my free time I'm working on this. So the next step is just that keeping the scope small helped a lot, because we can go feature crazy with this, but that was not my idea. Just, we have two main services. We have the commit and query. That's it. And then you have the administration user interface that you can just see all your data, manage all your data, organize the data, create queries, etc. And I want to keep it that way. I want to keep it small. Down the road, will we create an order notification component that won't be part of the EHRServer, but will be attached to the EHRServer. That will be used to when you receive compositions that have orders, let's say laboratory, imagenology, or you have medication prescriptions in the documents, in the clinical documents, we will grab those and notify external systems like the laboratory information system, the radiology information system, and pharmacy, maybe translating those openEHR documents into EHRServer messages or FHIR or whatever. Yeah, that depends on the other system, but we will do that down the road, I think. Tough question, Ian. We will use or implement AQL. AQL is let's say the standard way of querying openEHR EHRs. Right now we have the query builder. Builder uses an AQL-like way of creating queries, but it's not AQL. AQL is a syntax that can be mapped to our internal query model. But I think we will support AQL down the road, but it's not part of the core right now. It requires some work. I don't have much time to do that right now, but I think if we get to the point to actually have a pilot or two in place, we will have enough time to add that. And if that is a requirement from the pilot, also we will prioritize that. But right now it's not a priority, but it's a nice to have for me. But it will require some time, and I might need some help also. The main issue for me right now is for supporting AQL is really to find a syntax that works for the parser, or a parser already built on Java, because we use Java technologies. If we can get that from a company that already built that, that would be great. If not, we need to build the parser ourselves and create the syntax ourselves. I'm really not an expert on building parsers. So I would like to, other people that is better than me on that area and knows more of defining formal syntaxes than me, builds that, and so I can use that. But I think it's a nice to have. I think down the road we will support that, but it's not right now. I think that's the full answer. Any other questions, comments, suggestions? I think when I publish the link to YouTube, you can leave comments also on YouTube. So if you have any further questions, if you need something, just let me know. And if you want to test the server yourself, the simplest way is to go here, create an account. Yeah, and you will put your username and email and organization name, because this will create an organization for you. So you will have your data separated from other people using the same instance of the server. Just enter the CAPTCHA text, and you will receive an email. The email will say which number was associated with the organization, and to log in, you will need your username, your organization number that will be on that email, and a password. And the password will be, you need to reset your password. You need to put a new password from a link that is provided on that email. So with the 3 values you will enter, and you will access just your information. Yeah. Right now the queries are shared between all the organizations, but maybe down the road we will separate also that. Because for testing, it's easier to have just one set of queries instead of defining queries per organization. But down the road, I think we'll have more organizations that will need specific queries for that organization, and we won't bother other organizations with the queries of another organization. So down the road, we might do that. Another question. I would like to have the related links. Another doc PDF is about it. Here is this is the link to the guide. Let me publish this. This is the current EHRServer guide. It's in English right now only. I will translate that to Spanish soon and hopefully to Portuguese if someone helps me. But that's the current documentation, the current guide. It didn't appear here. That's weird. That's it. The system have integrations with other knowledge bases. No, we don't need integration really with other knowledge bases because all the information we need, let's say for building queries and for indexing data, is in the operational templates. Yeah, so it's all there. And also, when you get a clinical document from an external system that commits the clinical document will have internally the codes and coding systems that you used on the system that created that clinical document, on the EMR, the PHR, or whatever you used to input data. That will have that in the content of the clinical document. Then when you create a query, you can use those codes to query actually on the definition of the criteria. You can use standard codes from different terminologies. So you can use SNOMED or mesh terms or codes to query. And those types of data will be, let me just create a quick sample, will be code text. So you need to search here nodes that have the type code text. Those will be will have codes from standard terminologies or internal terminologies. For openEHR or for openEHR, it doesn't matter. So in this case, this has a term from SNOMED. So in the terminology, you will see SNOMED as the value for the terminology. So here, if you want, all the clinical records that have this this node is this is a diagnosis or a health problem code. You want all that have, I don't know, chest pain. Here you put the SNOMED code for the chest pain, and you can create the criteria to get all the documents to that have the diagnosis chest pain, or you can use this if you want. I want the documents that the code is for the terminology SNOMED, and it's one of these codes, and you can put many codes here. So that's another nice feature of the EHRServer for creating queries based on terminologies. So you can see here you can query by chest pain, by back pain, by neck pain, or whatever, and you will get clinical documents with that information. That's a way to define queries using standard terminologies. But you can also query for, I don't know, codes associated with drugs, yeah. But that is not part of the EHRServer itself. It's content that the users define. Really, is the data you commit to the server and how you define the query. The EHRServer just allows you to define the query with the content, the criteria you want. Yeah, I hope that answered your question, Bruce. What needs integration, about your question, what needs integration with standard terminologies are the systems that are used to input the data. So we have the codes in the EHRServer later, the standard codes. I hope that answered your question. Any other questions, comments, just anything? I am here for you. Well, I think that's it. It's been long enough, so I will leave you with the link later to the video, so you can see it again. You can watch it again. You can go through the guide. If you have any questions about the functionality, the guide, how it works, if the server can be integrated to something else, or if you have a use case that and you want to know if the EHRServer applies to your use case, just let me know. And remember, we are looking for pilot projects. And this is open source and free to use. And if you have a pilot, I can help you implement the EHRServer to have it used. My main goal right now is this to be used, and gather the next round of requirements from real use. So that's it for me. So thanks for being here. I hope you enjoyed the demo. And if you need anything, just my email is pablo.pasos@olabs.com. Just email me directly, no problem. Yeah, just let me know if I can help. So thank you for being here, and good evening, afternoon, night, morning, depending on where you are. Bye-bye.